Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rogan, and you are watching The Mysterious Stoner in a Bolo. And welcome to episode number 16. We have come quite a long ways, and we are almost at the end, but not quite there. In fact, I would say there are only between about 3 and 5 episodes left. And then there will be some episodes following that will be a bit on their own, and then the next series will begin. But for now, let's get back to the story. Where we left off last time, Salem was getting married. He was engaged, and he was moving out of the apartment. There was no way I was going to be able to take care of myself on the amount of money that I was making, plus I had quite a large debt from having LASIK eye surgery. So I found an alternative, an answer that would help me take care of my earthly needs, and that was to become a trucker. Now, I knew absolutely nothing about trucking beforehand. Everything about it was going to be brand new to me. And so I started trying to figure out how to get myself into trucking, and I discovered that there are companies that will pay you and support you through trucking school as long as you come work for them for a minimum amount of time, and you can get your commercial driver's license practically for free. And they even pay for your hotel where you stay at if you have to travel to go to the nearest trucking school that the company works with. And it can be quite nice, actually. But because I was such a naive individual, of course, I was taken up by the second worst trucking company that exists out there. Now, everyone knows that the trucking company Swift is one of the worst companies to work for and to work with because of all the accidents that they get into and all the new people that they constantly hire and that they don't completely train. In fact, you can go onto Facebook, look up the group Twisted Truckers, and it's a group full of trucking memes and videos sent in by truckers, or pictures sent in by truckers of trucking accidents. Even if you're not a trucker, it's very interesting, and it can be quite informative. And a lot of truckers are on there, and you can even get really good advice on there too. And you will find Swift mentioned there, and in many pictures, quite a bit. The company I worked for was named CR England. Not quite as bad as Swift. At least they tried to look professional in what they did. The stories I heard, and I did have to endure my fair share of headaches with them. Not to mention their pay was absolute garbage. And I didn't realize this at the time because of how naive I was. I didn't know I was a trusting individual, but that recruiters for companies can lie and be very misleading in an attempt to get drivers because it adds to their bonus and their paycheck and all that. And I was led to believe that I would be making nearly 30 cents a mile driving. But as it turned out, I was only getting half of that because I would never be driving by myself. The truck earned 30 cents per mile. I'm not really quite sure why, how they figured that the truck was earning the money, but that 30 cents was split between two individuals. And my pay that I got while working for CR England was not much better than working for a temp agency at a job assignment that paid roughly 11 an hour. But otherwise, I actually got pretty lucky. There were stories of trucks with multiple students and only one driving instructor that all had to share the entire semi-truck, and there would only be 2 bunks and 2 seats, and there was some stories about some overstuffed trucks. I was fortunate to have one instructor all to myself, and I also heard of other instructors not being very good and not following all the rules. Mine happened to be really good. No complaints about him. Really, besides the pay, my only complaint about working for CR England, from my personal experience, is simply having to deal with the dispatch sometimes, because they weren't always happy to let you go home, and they wouldn't always try very hard to get you back for your time off when you would request for it. They might go a little early, they might give it to you a little late, and of course they were always more than eager to get you back out on the road, especially if you were willing to go early. Now, I actually learned to really enjoy driving an 8-speed stick-shift semi-truck tractor-trailer. It was a lot of fun, and my teacher was very patient and very understanding with me, and very chill all around, and even said I was one of his best students. Although, trying to back into a dock is always a challenge. Even the best truckers can have a really bad day at it. Once the training was all over with, I was moved on to my own truck to continue filling out, or I should say to begin filling out my 9-month contract with CR England. It wasn't a terrible experience. It actually really wasn't. But I did not have a choice about who I got stuck with in the truck. You see, I preferred to be on my own, and I got to be for some of the time, but because it was their company, it was their rules, and since they had paid for my commercials driver's license, they got to decide that I would be riding with another person. This also meant they could do longer runs and get more work done and all that. So it was ideal for them to do that. It's ideal for most companies, for the long range, anyways. And I wasn't really into that, but I was okay with it at the time. And fortunately, every person I happened to be with turned out to be pretty good. I didn't have any complaints about anyone. I got to know 3 or 4 individuals over the time, and I could rate them all on a scale of 1 to 10 on how tolerable they were. But I'm also a very tolerable person myself. But my favourite person by far that I was with happened to be a fine gentleman by the name of Frank. Frank had become a trucker in order to fix his marriage and to take care of his family. And he had his whole plan for how he was going to do it worked out. He was going to get a semi-truck that would, I believe it was going to be hauling cars, picking up random assignments along the way. I'm not into trucking now, so I can't really describe it to you as well, and it's been years since I've done it. But that was his goal. He had his plans figured out. We got to know each other really well. We had some similar beliefs. Yeah, I'd spent a lot of time, I should mention, listening to YouTube over the road, and this was the opportunity that I got to have finally, where I could just sit and listen to whatever I wanted to, horror stories, um, educational videos, uh, you name it, nerd related stuff. I went crazy with it, but I started to learn about Buddhism and evolution, things like that, and I started to really develop my own set of morals and beliefs that made the most sense to me as far as how to live. And I shared with Frank my views, and he had very similar views himself. And he even told me, you're very similar in beliefs to Buddhism and to the dude from The Big Lebowski. I had heard of Buddhism before, and I had heard of the dude and The Big Lebowski, but I had never seen the movie, never done the research on the religion at this point. And I found it very odd that beliefs and concepts that I thought I mostly came up with on my own, and conclusions that I came to on my own, would be found in a fucking movie and in a system of beliefs that I hadn't gotten to yet in studying and looking into. So this definitely piqued my curiosity, and of course I ended up looking into those and checking those out eventually. I was quite surprised by and found them both very intriguing, and we could talk about those at another time, but for now, let's continue on with the story. Frank also knew a lot about marijuana and beer, but unfortunately, neither of us could smoke weed while being truckers because that is illegal. It's illegal to drive a semi-truck with marijuana in your system. But we did sample quite a few beers from around the country, and between the companies I have driven for, that covers every state in the US except for Alaska and Hawaii. Although I have been to Hawaii. Miniature story for another time. We got along so well, in fact, that when we discovered that our contracts ended roughly around the same time, we decided we would stay in the same truck for the rest of that time, which was probably 3 or 4 months. And so he finished his contract and left, and I had to put up with 1 or 2 other people for a couple of weeks, and then I was off. And not long after, I found my next company to get with, which paid significantly better, and it was just great all around. I even got to drive by myself and just have my own truck. I didn't own it, but I was the driver, and there was no other than me. It was the privacy, the solitude, the open road. It was awesome. US Express is a very good company to work for. And yes, there were adventures, quite a number. I've been snowed in. I've gotten my truck stuck multiple times, to my embarrassment. Trying to make turns, going on roads that I shouldn't have, and getting my trailer stuck. Having to get a crane to come and pull me out because I made such a noob mistake. But it wasn't all bad and mistakes. I did pretty well for the most part. Okay, there was the one time where I backed into a trailer and I was a bit off. The truck that I was driving, this was for US Express, which makes it even worse because I really liked them. I backed into a trailer that I was picking up, and on the back of my truck, the tractor we call it, that was backing into the trailer, there were these, I think they were for wind, what do you call it, wind reduction, but they were on the sides and the back of my tractor, and they were made out of plastic, painted to match the rest of the truck, but they were plastic and attached with screws. And I backed into my trailer too much off, and I snapped off one of those wing-shaped pieces. And yes, I did get in a bit of trouble for it. I was in a bit of a rush. I was being rushed to pick up a trailer at the time, and my time clock was almost out, which is something you don't want to be driving when your time clock runs out, because there's only so much time in a day that you're allowed to drive. And I was running out of time and didn't take enough time to back up into my trailer properly and messed up my truck a bit. And yes, I did go to California and I got to see some of the bright lights there. I don't remember where I was actually. I wish I could remember the name of the casino that I went to. Massive place. It's a fucking palace. I don't think I'd ever been around a building quite like that one before. It was quite amazing. Quite a spectacular sight to see the California casinos. And just before that, or it might have been right after, can't remember which, but I got to visit Nevada as well, which there's something in Nevada I had never heard of before, but when we were going that way, I happened to find out, and I made a visit to a little place there called the Bunny Ranch. Got a pretty full tour and everything. If you don't know what the Bunny Ranch is, I'll let you look that up. Yes, I did have an enjoyable time there, and spent what was left in my bank account at the time. But I was trucking, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, while with the second company, being by myself was really, really nice. And I got a lot of time to think and to analyze my life and think about how crazy it was. And I came to a few conclusions as I mulled over different thoughts and subjects, because I had no plans for my life at this point. I didn't know how to make something of myself. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life other than be trucking at the moment, because trucking was just, well, it was fulfilling my needs, and I did eventually pay off my LASIK surgery during my time with the second company, with US Express. But I wasn't really sure about what else to do, and so I opened myself to all the possibilities. I was mature enough to understand now that as a trucker and as an introvert with such a weird background life, that the odds of me having a family someday and having children and all that, it would have been nice, but I realized that the odds of that happening weren't really in my favor. But I mean, it's not that I would give up or anything like that, but I came to accept the fact that there was a possibility that I could someday die by myself with no one around, and I learned to be okay with that. But I did have to do something. I didn't want to just live my life and have no goals at all. So I officially made my bucket list of things that I wanted to do. And if I did all those things on my list, it wasn't very long. I think there was skydiving, getting a motorcycle license, and a motorcycle itself, and driving a motorcycle across the US from one coast to another. And there were a couple other things, I believe. But if I made it through all that, I came up with 2 ways that I actually wanted to go out with a bang. The first one was taking a Ouija board, because I'd never used one before, and, well, at least getting accustomed to it, and seeing if it worked and whatnot. But I wanted to go into a haunted house and just see what happens, and screw with the spirits as much as possible. I didn't know anything about it, I just thought that would be a wild way to go out, dying by some pissed off spirits. And if I survived that, the follow-up idea was to go to Area 61 and try to find evidence for aliens. Because if the first one didn't succeed, that one probably would. I probably wouldn't even get very far. But that was just me thinking up ideas in my head, because I had no other concept of what to do with my life. But the bucket list was going to happen first. However, I was willing to let all of that go if I could find my one true soulmate. Because I really wanted that more than anything. I had never been in a real relationship yet. I mean, the one I had previously, my very first one, it had lasted about 1.5 years. But it wasn't the relationship it should have, could have. I don't know. It wasn't right, I guess you could say. And I wanted something genuine for myself, and I wanted someone I could genuinely give myself to. And I was willing to give up everything, even trucking for that. So I opened myself up to both pathways of possibilities. On the one hand, 80% of the time I was happy by myself. The only thing that could make things any better being by myself would be also having a dog, because I really like dogs. My favorite animal. And then on the other hand, there was the possibility of having something I never truly had before, a real relationship, something genuine with someone who wanted to genuinely give themselves to me and who I genuinely wanted to give myself to, and maybe have children. Now, I had been on dating sites before, and I had minimal success. I wasn't quite this dashing back then. I was working on that. But I had some success, but none of it was long-lasting. And during those times, I was a little bit more desperate, because I just wanted the experiences so much. But being out here, out on the road by myself, getting to think about things, and getting a chance to come to terms with reality, really think about the way things are, it really helped me get a grasp on the more likely possibilities. So I was not expecting OkCupid to work for me. I was definitely not expecting anything serious to come about. But Sure enough, something did come of it. And I will tell you about that in the next episode. But in the meantime, if you guys have enjoyed this video, I hope you'll leave a like, consider subscribing, click the notification bell. And yes, I know I'm terrible at forgetting to say this, but if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Hopefully, we can have a Q&A video sometime. Have I mentioned that before? Anyways, stay safe, stay positive, and until next week, my friends, farewell.